How many times have you been told to be quiet as a mouse on the ice? That every little squeak of your boots or thump of the bucket sends fish scattering for miles? We've all heard it. Well, what if I told you that's one of the biggest, most damaging myths in all of ice fishing? Today we're talking about sound. Not the sounds that scare fish, but the one specific sound you are actively avoiding that actually calls them right to your lure. By the end of this video, you'll understand why making a little noise, the right kind of noise, can be the difference between a blank screen and a lit-up flasher. We're going to uncover the reason why some guys seem to catch fish right after all the commotion of drilling a new hole, while you sit in dead silence getting nothing. So, let me ask you right now, are you a silent angler, or do you think a little noise is okay? Drop your answer in the comments below, and let's get into it. Look, the be quiet rule is drilled into us from our very first fishing trip. Our dads, our grandpas, all the old-timers, they all said the same thing: don't spook the fish. And on the surface, it makes perfect sense, right? A loud bang on the ice can feel like an earthquake down there in their world. This belief is so strong that we've all developed these habits, setting our expensive gear down like it's a sleeping baby, tiptoeing around our holes, and whispering to our buddies like we're in a library. For years, we've been conditioned to think that silence equals success. It's become the accepted wisdom, and nobody really questions it because it seems so logical. But fish behavior is way more complex than we give it credit for. And the way they perceive their world through vibration is something most anglers completely misunderstand. We're about to break down why this old rule needs a serious update. First, let's get into the simple physics of it all. Sound doesn't travel through ice and water the same way it travels through air to your ears. When you drop something heavy on the ice, it creates a high-frequency, sharp shockwave. That's a bad noise. It's unnatural, it's sudden, and it signals danger. It's the equivalent of a fire alarm going off in their living room. Fish will absolutely react negatively to that. But not all sounds are created equal. Lower frequency, rhythmic vibrations are entirely different. They travel through the water in a way that doesn't scream danger, but instead whispers, something is happening over here. Understanding this distinction is the absolute key. We're not talking about being loud and careless. We're talking about being strategic with the vibrations you create, turning them from a warning sign into an invitation. So let's clearly define good noise versus bad noise. Bad noise, as we said, is sharp, sudden, and erratic. Think about dropping your metal propane tank, slamming a shelter door shut, or stomping your feet heavily and randomly. These are sharp impacts that create a high-frequency shockwave. Fish feel this as a threat, but good noise is different. Good noise is often rhythmic and has a lower frequency. It can be the sound of scraping, chipping, or grinding. It's a noise that mimics natural occurrences in their environment. Think about it. The underwater world is not silent. There are sounds of other fish feeding, crayfish scuttling over rocks, and sediment being kicked up. These are the sounds of life, and more importantly, the sounds of a potential meal. Your goal is to imitate the good natural sounds, not the bad, unnatural ones. To really get this, you have to stop thinking about how a human hears and start thinking about how a fish feels. Fish have ears, but one of their most important sensory organs is the lateral line. This is a system of sense organs running down the side of their body that detects movement, vibration, and pressure changes in the water. It's how they hunt in dark or murky water and how they sense both predators and prey from a distance. They are exquisitely tuned to vibration. A sudden sharp shock wave overloads this system and sends them running for cover. But a subtle rhythmic vibration, that piques their interest. It's information. It's a signal they need to investigate. So when we make noise on the ice, we aren't just making sound. We are sending specific vibration patterns directly to the fish's most powerful sensory tool. Now, let's talk about a fish's core instinct, curiosity. Most predatory fish, from a small perch to a giant pike, are incredibly curious creatures. Their survival depends on investigating new things in their environment to determine if they are food, a threat, or irrelevant. An unusual but non-threatening vibration is a massive trigger for this curiosity. They don't immediately think danger, they think, what is that? Is that another fish feeding? Could that be an easy meal for me? This is especially true in the winter when food can be scarcer. They can't afford to ignore a potential feeding opportunity. By sitting in complete silence, you are giving them zero reason to be curious about your location. You are essentially invisible in a world they navigate by feel. The right sound makes you the most interesting thing happening on their block. So what is this one magical sound? What is this good noise we keep talking about? It's the sound of agitation at the hole. The big reveal is this: the single most effective sound to attract fish is the rhythmic chopping or scraping of an ice chisel or skimmer at the bottom of your fishing hole. It's that thump, thump, scrape, thump sound that many of us try to avoid making after we've set up. We think we're just cleaning out slush, but what we're actually doing is ringing a dinner bell. The low-frequency grinding of an auger blade cutting new ice has a similar, though more intense, effect. This is why you so often see fish show up on the flasher immediately after drilling a hole. It's not a coincidence. The commotion is precisely what called them in to investigate the disturbance. But why does this specific sound work so well? It's because it almost perfectly mimics the sounds of natural feeding activity. Imagine a school of perch or a group of bluegills pecking at the bottom. They are kicking up sediment, crunching on small invertebrates, and making a bit of a commotion. Or picture a crayfish or other bottom dweller moving rocks and shells around. These activities create low-frequency vibrations and sounds that travel through the water. To another nearby fish, these sounds signal that food has been found and a feeding frenzy might be starting. Your rhythmic chopping with a chisel or skimmer against the hard ice at the bottom of the hole sends out the exact same type of vibration. You are effectively imitating the sound of a successful feeding event, and that's an invitation no curious fish can resist. Let's call this the dinner bell theory. When you make these specific sounds, you're not just making random noise. You're sending a very clear signal to every fish within range. That signal says, food is being eaten over here. This does two things. First, it obviously attracts fish who are hungry and looking for a meal. Second, and maybe even more importantly, it triggers their competitive instinct. Fish know that if another fish is feeding, the opportunity won't last long. They need to get there fast to get their share before it's all gone. This is why you'll often see multiple marks appear on your flasher at once after you make some noise. You've created a sense of urgency. You've started a race, and your jig is waiting at the finish line. Here's a real-life situation that plays out all the time. You've been sitting on a spot for 30 minutes. It's dead quiet. Your flasher is completely blank, not a single mark. You start to get bored and a little bit of ice has formed in your hole. So you grab your metal ice skimmer and you don't just scoop the slush out. You give the bottom edges of the hole a few solid taps and scrapes to clean it up. Thump, thump, scrape. You look back down at your flasher and like magic, a red line is rocketing up from the bottom to check out your lure. That wasn't luck. That fish was likely sitting nearby the whole time, completely unaware or uninterested in your bait. The sound you made was the trigger. It was the stimulus that flipped its switch from inactive to active and curious. This is a repeatable pattern, not a random event. And this concept is not just about the initial noise of drilling the hole. That's a great start, but the effect wears off. The real pro move is to recreate this sound periodically throughout the day to keep fish in your area or to call in new ones that might be passing by. Think of it like a deer hunter using a rattle call. You're not just rattling once at sunrise and then sitting in silence for 8 hours. You do it periodically to simulate activity and draw deer in. It's the same principle under the ice. Every 15 or 20 minutes, if things are slow, grab that skimmer or chisel. Give the bottom of the hole a few good, solid scrapes and chops. Send out that dinner bell vibration again. You're essentially refreshing the invitation and reminding every fish in the neighborhood that the party is still happening right under your feet. This brings us to the biggest mistake most ice anglers make, the mistake of being too quiet. When you sit there in absolute, total silence for an hour, you're not being stealthy, you're being invisible. The fish down there have no reason to know you exist. They have no reason to swim over and check out your specific spot among the thousands of other square feet of lake bottom. You are passively waiting for a fish to randomly swim directly under your hole. By making a little strategic noise, you shift from being a passive waiter to an active hunter. You are projecting your presence in a positive, attractive way. You are giving the fish a reason to deviate from their path and come directly to you. Being quiet isn't a virtue. In many cases, it's a tactical error that's costing you bites. Now, let's talk about specific species. This sound technique is an absolute killer for panfish, especially yellow perch, crappie, and bluegill. These fish are often found in schools and are intensely competitive. When one of them finds food, the others swarm in, trying to get a piece of the action before it's gone. The sound of chopping and scraping perfectly simulates the sound of one of their schoolmates feeding on the bottom. It's a natural trigger that can pull in an entire school from 20 or 30 feet away. For perch, who are notorious bottom feeders and love to root around for invertebrates, the sound of bottom disturbance is a surefire signal that food is available. You are speaking their language, the language of a feeding frenzy. But what about the bigger, more cautious predators like walleye? Many anglers believe walleye are extra spooky and that any noise will send them packing. And while it's true they can be wary, they are also incredibly curious predators. A loud, sharp bang might put them on edge, but a consistent low-frequency vibration is a different story. It can pull them in from a long distance to investigate the commotion. They want to know what all those little perch are so excited about. Often, a big walleye will hang on the edges of the activity, watching and waiting for an opportunity. The noise you make to attract the perch is the same noise that tells the walleye where to find its next meal. You create the food chain reaction, and your lure is the easiest meal in the chain. Let's directly debunk the spooking myth once and for all. Yes, you can absolutely spook fish with sound. We have all seen it happen, but it's all about the type of sound. Remember, dropping a heavy metallic object creates a sharp, high-frequency pressure wave. It's an acoustic shock. The rhythmic sound of chipping or scraping ice is completely different. It's a low-frequency vibration that feels more natural to the fish's lateral line. Think of the difference between a gunshot and a drumbeat. One is an alarming crack. The other is a rhythmic pulse. Fish are conditioned to react to pulses and vibrations as part of their daily life. They are not conditioned to react to sudden, explosive shocks. Once you understand this crucial difference, the fear of making any sound at all starts to fade away. So, how do you actually do this correctly on the ice? The technique is incredibly simple. You don't need any special equipment. All you need is your ice chisel or, even better, a sturdy metal ice skimmer. After you've set up and your line is down, simply use your tool to work the inside of your hole. Give the sides a few solid taps, scrape down the edges, and most importantly, chip away at the bottom rim of the hole where the ice meets the water. The goal is to make contact with that solid ice to send vibrations out. You're not just paddling water, you're creating resonance. Do this for about 10 to 15 seconds. A few solid thumps and scrapes every few minutes is more than enough. It's an easy habit to get into while you're jigging. Now, a quick word of caution. Don't overdo it. The goal here is not to create an underwater rock concert. You're not trying to bash the ice non-stop for 30 minutes straight. That would likely become counterproductive and might spook fish, especially in shallow water. This is about creating periodic, intentional sound to trigger curiosity. Think of it as a strategic call. A few taps and scrapes every 5 to 10 minutes or whenever things get slow is the perfect cadence. It's just enough to send out the signal, pique their interest, and draw them in without being overly aggressive or alarming. The key is rhythm and repetition, not sheer volume and chaos. Let the silence in between the sounds work for you too. This is the moment where your electronics, like a flasher or a live sonar unit, become your best friend and prove the theory. This isn't just some abstract idea. You can see the results in real time. The next time your screen is blank, try it. Make some noise by chipping the hole, then immediately stop and watch your screen intently. More often than not, you will physically see the proof. You'll see red lines appear from the side or rise up from the bottom, moving directly toward your hole to investigate the source of the sound. This is the ultimate confirmation. Watching a fish react to your sound on a screen turns you from a believer into a practitioner. It's the evidence that proves you are actively influencing the fish's behavior. This brings me to a funny thought. We all know that one old-timer on the lake. He's always out there, and he always seems to be catching fish, even on slow days. And if you watch him, you might notice he's constantly fiddling with his hole, always chipping away at it with his chisel. For years, we probably all thought, man, that guy is really obsessed with keeping his hole clean. We laughed it off. But what if he wasn't just being fussy? What if he knew this secret all along? What if his constant cleaning was actually a calculated technique to call fish in? It's very possible that this new idea is actually an old secret that got lost in the modern obsession with being perfectly silent and still. Now, let's take this to the next level by combining two senses, sound and scent. You've successfully used sound to call the fish in. They are curious. They are competitive, and they've come over to your hole to see what's going on. Now you have to seal the deal. This is where having an attractive bait or a strong scent becomes crucial. When they arrive, drawn in by the vibration, you want to present them with a meal they can't refuse. Tip your jig with a live minnow head, a wax worm, or use one of the many powerful commercial scents. You've called them to the dinner table with the bell. Now make sure you serve them a delicious meal. This 1-2 punch of sound and scent is an incredibly effective system for turning curious lookers into aggressive biters. Of course, every rule has its exceptions. So, are there ever times when silence really is golden? The answer is a qualified yes. In extremely shallow and crystal clear water, say, under 5 feet, fish may be more reliant on their eyesight and can be more easily spooked by overhead movement and shadows. In these specific situations, being more stealthy and minimizing your presence is a good idea. However, even in this scenario, the right kind of rhythmic, low-frequency sound can still trigger curiosity. You just need to be more subtle about it. But for the vast majority of ice fishing situations, in 5 feet of water or more, in stained water, or for deeper fish, using sound to your advantage will outperform sitting in silence 99% of the time. So, let's land on the final, most important takeaway from all of this. The biggest mental shift you need to make is to stop thinking of yourself as a hunter trying to be a ghost on the ice. Instead, start thinking about how you can imitate a natural food-related event. You're not hiding from the diners. You are ringing the dinner bell to announce that the restaurant is open. Your job is to create a believable illusion of feeding activity that draws other fish in. Once you embrace the idea that you can actively call fish to you, instead of just passively waiting for them to find you, it will fundamentally change your entire approach to ice fishing. It puts you in control and turns a slow day of waiting into an active day of hunting. So let's put it all together. For decades, we've been told that absolute silence is the key to ice fishing success. But today, we've turned that idea completely on its head. We've learned that the right kind of sound, that rhythmic chopping, scraping, and agitation, doesn't scare fish. It attracts them by tapping into their natural curiosity and competitive instincts. The real pivot point here, the big aha moment, is understanding that you need to stop thinking like a quiet hunter and start thinking like a fish looking for its next meal. The sound of agitation is a universal signal for food in the underwater world. And by creating it, you're essentially advertising a free lunch right under your hole. This one small change can completely transform a slow day. Instead of just waiting for fish to wander by, you are actively calling them to your lure. It is the definition of proactive, not reactive fishing. Thank you so much for watching and for being open to challenging the old rules. If this video blew your mind, or if you're excited to try this on your next trip, please smash that like button and subscribe for more tips that challenge the old ways. And now I really want to hear from you. What is the oldest fishing rule you were taught that you now think might be completely wrong? Let's get a great discussion going in the comments below.